Slow River was, I wrote it in 1993 and it was published in 94. And the reason I want to read from it, actually it was published in 95. The reason I want to read from it tonight is that I have so many stories to tell about this book. It's been out there such a long time. It's been published all over the place. But the first story I want to tell was in 94, I printed out the manuscript, because in those days one printed these things, put it in an envelope, mailed it to my agent, Fran. Now my agent had sold my first novel, Ammonite, which was set, it was like a future planetary romance. It was a world only of women. So she gets this outline for Slow River, and she phones me up and she says, well, Nicola, it's a really interesting story, but this is not a selling outline. And I say, well, why not, Fran? And she says, well, now I understand why Marg, the protagonist of Ammonite, had to have a girlfriend, because she didn't have a choice, poor thing. But why is Lord, the protagonist of Slow River, why does she have a girlfriend? And I said, because she's a dyke. And then I fired her. It just doesn't pay to take shit from me. But she was so wrong. I had zero problem selling this book. In fact, I had more than one offer. Eventually I went with Valentine Del Rey. And I had zero problem getting mainstream reviews. It was reviewed everywhere. New York Times, Entertainment Chronicle, LA Times, Washington Post, except the queer press. I took advanced reading copies to Outright in Boston when there still was an Outright. There will be again one day. So I took a bunch of advanced reading copies and I couldn't give them away. They just, people were like, I don't read stuff like that. And I was like, stuff like what? They're like, you know, rockets and monsters and stuff. I said, well, there's no rockets in this book and there are no monsters except for humankind. And she said, no, I don't read sci-fi. So I moved on to the next critic. She said, oh, you wrote Ammonite? I said, oh, why, yes, indeed. And then she looked at the Slow River Galley and she said, but why do you call your stuff sci-fi? And I said, well, actually, I call it science fiction. Because that's what it is. She said, but what? No. She said, sci-fi is terrible. I don't like it, but I like your book. So it's not sci-fi. So why do you call it sci-fi? How can you deal with it? I came back from Outright with all the advanced reading copies I had on. Eventually, Victoria Randall reviewed it for LBR, but that was the only review I think I ever done. Then, of course, I saw the genre reviews, the science fiction reviews, and oh my God, the reviewers were so bothered by the fact that all my novels were only about lesbian sex. Only lesbians had sex in my books. There was no heterosexual sex. And it's true, you know, that there is a lot of dyke sex in my books. There's also a lot of straight sex. It's just that people didn't see it. I don't know how many of you have read about the experiment where you get 10 people in a room, all belonging to a traditionally male occupation, like physician or engineer. Oh, okay, fair enough. But there's an experiment where you put 7 men, 3 women in a room, and an observer will say it's about half and half. And then if you have 4 women,
Sorry.
Okay, is that better? So if you have 10 people in a room, 7 men, 3 women, they think there's equal numbers of men and women. If you have 4 women, 6 men, they think it's a majority of women. And it's kind of what happens with reviews. The other crowds out the norm. But the book was published all over the world, and it's still in print. I still get royalty checks twice a year. They're not huge, but buys a really nice meal out, some clothes, some beer. So basically, the moral of my story is, don't let anyone ever tell you that your vision isn't marketable. If it's good enough, someone will buy it. You don't know when, you don't know who, and you don't know in what form, but they really will. And if you make it good enough, they will buy it. And that's why you're here, after all, is to make your vision better. It's not to follow someone else's vision. All the people here in this room we're making the new queer literary tradition. In this room, all you people, you are the nucleus of the new queer literature. So don't let anyone tell you what to do. Burn with your own vision. Write what you want to write. But listen to the people who can help you make it better. Don't listen to the people who say you can't. Anyway, I have a million stories I could tell about this book, but I think it's probably time for me to actually get to the book. It's a near-future science fiction story. It's the story of one woman and her place in the world. It's a story about identity. There's, of course, lots of sex and explosions and cool stuff, but I usually describe it as a novel about sewage and abuse. Because there's that too, and it makes people pay attention. The main character is a woman called Law, and she's born into a really privileged family. She lives her life with riches, everything she wants. But then, at the age of 18, she's kidnapped, and she's stripped of everything, even her clothes. She's dumped naked and injured in a strange city in the middle of the night. And she's got no one to turn to, nowhere to go. And then the book actually begins when she's 5, but I can tell you all this later. But the bit I'm going to read now is from near the beginning, when Law is waking up in an alley. The first thing she thought when she woke naked on the cobbles was, don't roll onto your back. She lay very still and tried to concentrate on the cold stones under hip and cheek, on the strange taste in her mouth. Drugs. They'd given her drugs to make her stop struggling after she couldn't afford to remember now. She would think about it later, when she was safe. The memory of what had happened shrank safely back into its tight bubble. She raised her head, felt the great open slash across her trapezoid muscles pull and stretch. Nausea forced her to breathe shallowly for a moment, but then she lifted her head again and looked about. Night in some strange city, and it was cold. She was curled in a fetal position around some rubbish on a silent cobbled street, more like an alley. Somewhere at the edge of her peripheral vision, the colors of a news tank flashed silently. She closed her eyes again, trying to think. A wind was blowing now, and paper, a news printout, flapped in her face. She pushed it away, then changed her mind and pulled it to her. Paper, she had read, had insulating qualities. The odd, metallic taste in her mouth was fading, and her head cleared a little. She had to find somewhere to hide, and she had to get warm. Rain fell on her lip, and she licked it off automatically, feeling confused.
Why should she hide? Surely there were people who would love her and care for her, tend her gently and clean her wounds, if she just let them know where she was. But hide, said the voice from her crocodile brain. Hide. And her muscles jumped, and sweat started on her flanks, and the slick grey memory like a balloon in her head swelled and threatened to burst. She crawled towards the news tank because its lurid colours, the series of news pictures flashing over and over in its endless cycle, imitated life. She sat on the road in the rain in the middle of the night, naked, and bathed in the colours as if they were filtered sunlight, warm and safe. It took her a while to realise what she was seeing. Herself. Herself, sitting naked on a chair, blindfolded, begging her family to please, please pay what her kidnappers wanted. The pictures were like a can opener, ripping open the bubble in her head, drenching her with images. The kidnapped, the humiliation, the camera filming it all. So your family will see we're serious, he had said. Day after day of it. An 18th birthday spent huddled naked in a tent in the middle of a room with nothing but a plastic slop bucket for company. And here it was, in colour, her naked and weeping, a man ranting at the camera demanding money, her tied to a chair, begging for food. Begging. And the whole world had seen this. The whole world had seen her naked, physically and mentally, while they ate their breakfast or took the passenger's flight to work. Or maybe drinking coffee at home. They'd been caught by the cleverly put together images and decided, what the hell, may as well pay to download the whole story. And she remembered her kidnappers, one who had always smelled of frying fish, half leading, half carrying her out into the barnyard because she was supposed to be dopey with the drugs she had palmed. The other one, camera on his shoulders, filming from the back of an open van. She remembered the smell of rain on the farm implements rusting by a wall, and the panic. The panic as she thought, this is it, they're going to kill me. And the absolute determination to fight one last time. The way the metallic blanket had felt as it slid off her shoulders. How she pushed the man by her side, dropped the fist-sized jag of metal into her palm and turned. Remembered the look on his face as his eyes met hers. As he knew she was going to kill him. As she knew she was going to shove the sharp metal into his throat. And she did. She remembered the tight gurgle as he fell, pulling her with him, crashing into a pile of metal, the ancient plough blade opening her own back from shoulder to lumbar vertebrae. The shouting of the other man as he jumped from the van, cameras smashing to the cobbles, pulling her up, checking the man on the ground, shouting, "You killed him, you stupid bitch! You killed him!" The way her body wouldn't work, wouldn't obey her urge to run. How he pushed her roughly into the van and slammed the doors. Remembered him telling the van where to go, the blood on his hands. The way he cursed her for a fool. Hadn't she known they were letting her go? But she hadn't. She thought they were going to kill her. And then his sad look. The way he shook his head and said, "Sorry, but you forced me to do this, and at least you won't feel any pain." And the panic again, scrabbling blindly at the handle behind her, the door falling open. She remembered beginning the slow tumble backwards, the simultaneous flooding sting of the nasal drug that should have been fatal. But she was alive, alive enough to sit in the rain, skin stained with pictures of herself, and remember everything.